My name is Emma, and I thought the hardest part of my year was surviving that brutal marketing pitch that finally landed me the promotion I'd been chasing for 3 years. That changed the moment I discovered my flight ticket was gone, stolen by the one person I trusted most in this world. I'm 27, and for the first time in my adult life, everything was finally falling into place. The promotion came with a salary bump that meant I could actually afford to breathe, to dream, to plan something bigger than just surviving paycheck to paycheck. So I did what any sensible person would do. I booked myself a trip to New York City. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Not just any trip. This was going to be my celebration, my reward, my chance to attend the Digital Marketing Innovation Summit that could catapult my career into the stratosphere. I'd saved for 8 months. Skipping dinners out, buying generic groceries, wearing the same 3 blouses to work in rotation. Every dollar went toward this dream. The ticket cost me nearly $1,500, but it was worth it. Business class, direct flight, arriving Friday morning with the entire weekend to network, learn, and prove to myself that I was more than just another face in the corporate crowd. I remember calling Ava the night I booked it, practically vibrating with excitement. "'Cause I did it," I'd said, pacing around my tiny apartment. "I'm actually going to New York! Can you believe it?" Ava had squealed with what seemed like genuine joy. "Emma, that's incredible! You deserve this so much! Tell me everything about the conference." We'd stayed on the phone for 2 hours, mapping out my itinerary, discussing which sessions I should prioritize, even planning what I'd wear to the networking dinner. Ava had always been my cheerleader, my partner in crime, the sister I never had. Growing up, our mothers, who were sisters themselves, had raised us more like siblings than cousins. We shared secrets, clothes, dreams, and disappointments. That's why what happened next felt like a knife straight through my chest. The morning of my flight, I woke up at 4:30 a.m., nerves and excitement battling in my stomach. My suitcase had been packed for a week, sitting by the door like a faithful dog waiting for a walk. I'd checked in online the night before, printed my boarding pass, and even called a rideshare to the airport. But when I reached for my purse to grab my ID and boarding pass, my blood turned to ice water. The boarding pass was gone. I tore through my apartment like a hurricane, checking every drawer, every pocket, every surface twice. My hands were shaking as I logged into the airline's website, praying I could just print another copy. That's when I saw the message that would haunt me for weeks to come. "This boarding pass has been used for check-in by another passenger." The room started spinning. Used by another passenger? That was impossible. I was the only one with access to my email, my account, my Ava. The realization hit me like a physical blow. 2 weeks ago, Ava was at my apartment helping me practice my conference presentation. She'd spilled coffee on her laptop and asked to use mine to show me some examples from her own marketing portfolio. I'd given her my password, watched her log into her email, never thinking twice about it. But she'd seen my confirmation email. She'd seen my boarding pass. With trembling fingers, I called the airline. The customer service representative was polite but firm. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but the ticket registered to Emma Chen has already been used for check-in this morning at 5:47 a.m. The passenger attempted to board flight 447 to JFK, but missed the final boarding call." Missed the final boarding call. Ava had not only stolen my ticket, she'd missed the damn flight. I called Ava 17 times in a row. Each call went straight to voicemail, her cheerful voice chirping about leaving a message and she'd get back to me soon. Soon. The word felt like mockery. My best friend Liam found me 3 hours later, still in my pajamas, sitting on my kitchen floor, surrounded by printed emails and airline confirmations, looking like a detective who'd lost her mind. "Emma?" His voice was gentle, careful. "You were supposed to be on a plane by now. What's wrong?" I looked up at him, this man who'd been my anchor through every crisis since college, and the words tumbled out in a broken stream. "She took it, Liam. Ava took my ticket. She used my boarding pass and she missed the flight, and now everything is ruined." Liam knelt beside me, his dark eyes scanning the papers scattered around us. He'd always been the rational one, the problem solver, the friend who could find logic in chaos. Okay, let's think about this step by step. You're sure it was her? I handed him my phone, showing him the airline's confirmation. Look at the check-in time, 5:47 this morning. I was still asleep. But Ava, I scrolled through my messages, finding the text she'd sent me 3 days earlier. She said she had an early morning meeting today, something about a freelance project. A freelance project in New York? Liam's eyebrows raised. She never said where. I felt sick. God, how could I be so stupid? She was asking me all these questions about the airport, about check-in procedures, about whether I'd ever used mobile boarding passes. I thought she was just being supportive. Liam helped me to my feet, his hands steady on my elbow. We're gonna figure this out, but first, you need to eat something, and then we're gonna call her until she answers. But Ava didn't answer. Not that day, not that evening. Her social media went dark, no Instagram stories, no Facebook check-ins, nothing. It was like she'd vanished into thin air, taking my dreams with her. By Sunday morning, I was oscillating between fury and heartbreak. Liam had stayed over, bringing takeout and letting me rage and cry in equal measure. He had helped me research rebooking options, but the conference was over, and flights to New York cost twice as much with no advance notice. I keep thinking there has to be an explanation, I said, staring at my phone for the 100th time. Maybe someone stole her phone. Maybe she's in the hospital. Maybe she betrayed you, Liam said quietly. And I know that's the last thing you want to hear, Emma, but you need to consider the possibility that Ava made a choice, a really, really bad choice. That's when my phone buzzed with a text from Jordan, Ava's longtime friend and sometime accomplice in questionable decisions. Emma, I heard about the flight mix-up. Ava feels terrible about everything. She's staying at my place if you want to talk. Mix-up. That's what they were calling it. A mix-up. I showed Liam the message, and his jaw tightened. Well, at least now we know she's alive and well enough to spin this story. I'm going over there, I said, already reaching for my keys. I'm coming with you. Jordan's apartment was in a trendy part of downtown, all exposed brick and industrial lighting that screamed creative professional. When she opened the door, her usually confident demeanor faltered at the sight of my face. Emma, hi, come in. Ava's just... Where is she? I didn't have patience for pleasantries. Jordan stepped aside, and I saw Ava curled up on the couch, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Her blonde hair was unwashed, pulled back in a messy bun, and she was wearing the same clothes I'd seen her in 2 days ago. When she looked up at me, her eyes were red-rimmed and filled with something that looked like shame. Emma, she whispered. Explain. I stood in the middle of the room, arms crossed, feeling like a prosecutor about to deliver a closing argument. Explain to me how your boarding pass ended up in your hands. Explain to me how you checked in for my flight. Explain to me how you missed the most important opportunity of my career. Ava's composure cracked, and she started crying. Not the delicate tears of someone seeking sympathy, but the ugly, desperate sobs of someone who knew they'd crossed a line they could never uncross. I lost my job, she choked out. 3 weeks ago. The agency let me go, said I wasn't a good fit for their culture. I've been applying everywhere, but no one's calling back, and my rent is due, and I can't ask my parents for money again because they already think I'm a failure. So you stole from me? My voice was deadly calm. I didn't steal, the words exploded out of her. I was going to pay you back. There was this interview, this amazing opportunity with a startup in Brooklyn. They wanted to meet in person, said they were looking for someone who could start immediately. I thought if I could just get there, if I could nail this interview, I could pay you back and book you a new flight and everything would be fine. Jordan shifted uncomfortably beside us. Ava, maybe we should... No. I held up a hand, my eyes never leaving Ava's face. Let her finish. Let her tell me how she justified destroying my dreams for a maybe. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, Ava continued, her voice breaking. I was supposed to be there by 9 a.m., but the flight was delayed on the runway for 3 hours. By the time we landed, it was past noon. I missed the interview. I missed everything. The whole trip was for nothing. No, I said, my voice rising. The whole trip was for nothing for me. You took my seat on my flight to my city, and when you failed, you took my backup plan too. Because now I can't afford another ticket, I can't attend the conference, and I can't network with people who could change my entire career trajectory. Liam stepped closer to me, a silent reminder that he was there, that I wasn't alone in this. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But Emma, I was desperate. I haven't been able to pay my rent in 2 months. I'm behind on everything, and I thought, you thought you'd gamble with my life instead of dealing with your own problems like an adult. The words came out sharp, each one designed to cut. You sat on the phone with me for 2 hours, listening to me talk about how excited I was, how much this meant to me, and the whole time you were planning to steal it from me. I was going to tell you, she said weakly. When? After you'd already ruined everything? The room fell silent except for the sound of Ava's ragged breathing. I stared at this woman I'd loved like a sister, this person who'd held my hand through breakups and celebrated my victories, and I felt something fundamental shift inside my chest. Trust, once broken, doesn't just disappear. It shatters into tiny pieces that cut everything they touch. Get up, I said finally. What? Get up. Look at me. Look at what you've done. Ava slowly stood, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Two women who'd grown up together, who'd shared everything, who'd promised to always have each other's backs. I'm sorry, she whispered. Emma, I'm so sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. I nodded, slowly. You're sorry? And I'm sure you mean that. But sorry doesn't get me to New York. Sorry doesn't undo the lies. Sorry doesn't give me back the trust I had in my family. I turned to leave, then stopped. I need you to know something, Ava. This wasn't just about a plane ticket. This was about believing that the people who claim to love you won't destroy your dreams to save themselves. And you've taught me that maybe I was wrong about that. As Liam and I walked toward the door, I heard Ava call my name one more time, her voice breaking on the syllables she'd said thousands of times before, but I didn't turn around. Some betrayals are too deep for sorry to reach. 3 days passed in radio silence. I threw myself into work, staying late at the office, volunteering for every project that came across my desk, anything to keep my mind off the empty space where my New York dreams used to live. My colleagues kept asking if I'd had a good trip, and each time I had to smile and lie, saying the conference was educational. Liam checked on me constantly, bringing coffee and listening to me dissect every conversation I'd ever had with Ava, searching for signs I'd missed. Maybe I pushed her to this, I said during one of our evening debriefs. Maybe I made her feel bad about her career struggles when I was so excited about mine. Stop, Liam said firmly. You're not responsible for her choices. You shared good news with someone you loved. That's what people do. But the guilt gnawed at me anyway, mixing toxic cocktails with my anger until I couldn't tell which emotion was stronger. Then Jordan called. Emma, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but there's something you need to know about why Ava really needed to get to New York. My stomach clenched. I already know why. The job interview. That's not the whole story. Jordan's voice was strained. Can you meet me for coffee? There are things Ava made me promise not to tell, but after seeing how destroyed you both are, I think you deserve the truth. An hour later, I sat across from Jordan at a quiet cafe, watching her fidget with her napkin like it held the secrets of the universe.
Ava didn't just lose her job, Jordan began. She was fired, and not for performance issues. She took a shaky breath. Her boss was harassing her, making comments about her appearance, finding excuses to touch her, implying that her job security depended on how friendly she was willing to be. I felt the air leave my lungs. What? She documented everything, saved emails, recorded conversations on her phone, When she finally reported it to HR, they investigated for about a week before deciding there wasn't enough evidence. Then, mysteriously, her position was eliminated due to budget cuts. Why didn't she tell me any of this? Jordan's laugh was bitter. Because you were so happy about your promotion, and she didn't want to burden you with her drama. She said you'd worked so hard to get where you are, and she didn't want to dump her mess on you. I stared into my coffee, feeling like the world had shifted beneath my feet. But that doesn't excuse... I'm not done, Jordan leaned forward. The interview in New York? It wasn't just any startup. It was a company started by 3 women who specifically hire people who faced workplace discrimination. Ava found them through a support group for harassment survivors. This job wasn't just about paying rent, it was about rebuilding her entire sense of self-worth. The cafe seemed to fade around me. Everything I thought I knew about the situation was crumbling, replaced by a picture so much more complicated than simple betrayal. I still stole from me, I said weakly. Yes, she did, and she knows it was wrong, but Emma, she's been sleeping on my couch for 6 weeks because she can't afford her rent. She's been eating ramen and cereal because she's too proud to ask for help. When she saw your ticket, she didn't see it as stealing from you. She saw it as borrowing hope. I put my head in my hands. I don't know what to do with this information. I think, Jordan said gently, you need to talk to her again. Really talk to her. Not as the person who was wronged, but as the person who's loved her for 27 years. That evening, I called my mom. If there was anyone who could help me navigate the complicated waters of family loyalty versus personal justice, it would be her. Emma, sweetheart, you sound terrible, she said after I'd managed a basic hello. Mom, what do you do when someone you love hurts you, but they had reasons that make sense, but those reasons don't make the hurt go away? There was a pause. This is about Ava, isn't it? I shouldn't have been surprised that she knew. My mom had an uncanny ability to read between the lines of every conversation. How did you... Your Aunt Linda called me yesterday. She's worried sick about Ava. Said she's been different lately, withdrawn and anxious. And you haven't posted any pictures from your New York trip, which isn't like you at all. I found myself telling her everything. The stolen ticket, the missed flight, the confrontation, and now Jordan's revelations about the harassment and the real reason behind Ava's desperation. Oh, honey, Mom said when I finished. What a mess. I don't know how to feel, I admitted. I'm still hurt and angry, but now I'm also sad for her and guilty for not knowing what she was going through. Can I tell you a story? Mom's voice took on that gentle tone she used when she was about to share wisdom disguised as family history. When your Aunt Linda and I were in our 20s, we had a terrible fight. I'd been saving money to buy a car, my first car, this little used Honda that represented freedom to me. Linda knew how much I wanted it, how hard I'd worked to save for it. But then her husband left her with 2 babies and no income, and she took the money from our joint savings account, money that included my car fund, to keep her apartment. I was furious. How dare she take my dream to solve her problems? We didn't speak for 8 months. 8 months. I missed Ava's first steps, her first words, because I was too proud and too hurt to see past my own pain.
What changed your mind? Your father, actually. He asked me a simple question. In 10 years, what will matter more? The car you didn't buy or the relationship you threw away? It took me weeks to swallow my pride enough to call her, but when I did, we both cried for an hour straight. I wiped tears I didn't realize had started falling. But this feels different, Mom. The trust is broken. Trust can be rebuilt, sweetheart. It takes time and effort from both people, but it can be stronger afterward if you both do the work. The question isn't whether Ava deserves forgiveness, it's whether your relationship deserves another chance. After we hung up, I sat in my apartment staring at the suitcase that had never made it to New York. It seemed smaller now, less significant, like a prop in someone else's play. I picked up my phone and typed a message to Ava. We need to talk. Really talk this time. Can you come over tomorrow? Her response came within minutes. Yes. Thank you for giving me another chance. Ava arrived the next evening looking like she'd lost 10 pounds in a week. Her clothes hung loose on her frame, and there were dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite cover. When I opened the door, we stood there for a moment, two people who'd shared a lifetime of memories, now separated by a chasm of hurt and misunderstanding. Come in, I said finally. She perched on the edge of my couch like she was ready to flee at any moment. I made tea, chamomile, her favorite, and we went through the motions of normalcy while the weight of everything unsaid pressed down on us. Jordan told me about your boss. Ava's face crumpled. I didn't want you to know. You were so happy about your promotion, and I didn't want to taint that with my mess. Ava, I moved closer to her on the couch. I'm your family. Your mess is my mess. That's how this works. Is it? Because sometimes I feel like I'm the family disaster and you're the family success story, and those are roles we can't change. The words hit me like a physical blow. Is that how you see us? Isn't it how everyone sees us? Emma, the marketing professional with the corner office and the perfect apartment. Ava, the freelancer who can't hold down a steady job and lives paycheck to paycheck when she's lucky enough to get a paycheck at all. I stared at her, seeing clearly for the first time how my success might have felt like a mirror reflecting her struggles. I never meant to make you feel that way. I know you didn't. That's what made it worse. You were genuinely happy for me when good things happened, genuinely supportive when they didn't. It made my resentment feel even uglier and unfair. We sat in silence for a moment, the honesty hanging between us like a bridge we were both afraid to cross. Tell me about the harassment, I said finally. Ava's hands shook as she recounted the months of uncomfortable meetings, inappropriate comments, and escalating pressure. She showed me some of the emails she had saved, messages that made my skin crawl and my heart break simultaneously. When I reported it, they made me feel like I was overreacting, being too sensitive. They said there was no pattern of behavior, that maybe I'd misunderstood his intentions. Then, suddenly, my position was eliminated, and I was escorted out the same day with a severance package that required me to sign a non-disclosure agreement. Even that's illegal. You could sue them. With what money? With what energy? I was barely holding myself together as it is. Fighting them would have destroyed what was left of me. I reached for her hand, and she let me take it. I wish you'd told me. I wanted to, so many times. But every time we talked, you had good news to share, and I didn't want to bring you down. When you told me about the conference, about how much it meant to you, I was genuinely excited. But I was dying inside because I felt so far behind, so worthless. So you took my ticket. So I took my ticket. Her voice broke. I saw it as my chance to start over, to find people who understood what I'd been through. The women who started that company, they built it.
Specifically to help survivors of workplace harassment rebuild their careers. I thought if I could just get there, if I could just tell my story and show them what I could do, maybe I could stop feeling like damaged goods. I squeezed her hand tighter. You're not damaged goods. I feel like I am. I feel like everything I touch turns to disaster, including us. We're not a disaster, I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. We're complicated. We're hurt, but we're not a disaster. Ava looked at me through tears. I know sorry isn't enough. I know I broke something precious between us. But Emma, you have to know that hurting you was the last thing I wanted to do. In my twisted logic, I convinced myself that I could make it work, that I could get the job and pay you back and book you another flight and somehow make everything right without you ever knowing what I'd done. That's not how trust works, Ava. Trust isn't about managing information so the other person never gets hurt. Trust is about choosing to do right by someone even when it's hard, even when you're desperate. I know that now. I knew it then too, if I'm being honest, but desperation makes you do things you never thought you were capable of. I leaned back against the couch, feeling emotionally exhausted but clearer than I had felt in weeks. I need you to know that I'm still angry. I'm still hurt. The fact that you had reasons doesn't erase the fact that you betrayed me. I understand. But I also need you to know that I love you. And I'm angry at myself for not seeing how much you were struggling. We're supposed to be there for each other, and somehow we both failed at that. Ava's tears started fresh. Does this mean you can forgive me? Eventually? I thought about my mother's words about the car that didn't matter and the relationships that do. I thought about the 27 years of friendship, the shared holidays, the inside jokes, the way Ava had held me when my college boyfriend cheated, the way she'd celebrated every small victory in my life. I think, I said slowly, it means we can try to rebuild something new, something stronger. But Ava, it's going to take time, and it's going to require both of us to be completely honest with each other going forward. No more protecting each other from difficult truths. I promise, she whispered. Emma, I promise. As we sat there, hands clasped, I realized that some betrayals don't end relationships. They transform them. The easy trust of childhood was gone, but maybe what would replace it could be even more valuable. The conscious choice to love someone despite their capacity to hurt you, and the commitment to build something together that could weather the storms that were sure to come. We weren't fixed, not even close. But for the first time since that terrible morning with the missing boarding pass, I had hoped that we could be. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange limbo. Ava and I texted every few days, careful, polite messages that felt like we were learning each other's language all over again. She'd send me articles about marketing trends she thought I'd find interesting. I'd forward her job postings that seemed like good fits. We were trying, but everything felt fragile, like we were building a house of cards in a room full of ceiling fans. Liam watched this delicate dance with the patience of someone who'd seen me through every major crisis of my adult life. How are you feeling about everything? He asked one Thursday evening as we grabbed dinner after work. Confused, I admitted, picking at my salad. I understand why she did it now, and I feel terrible about what she went through with that harassment situation, but I'm still angry about the lying and the betrayal. Is it possible to feel sympathy and resentment at the same time? Not only is it possible, it's probably the healthiest response. You're allowed to have complicated feelings about complicated situations. I just keep thinking about what my mom said about the car versus the relationship. But what if rebuilding the relationship means pretending the car never mattered? What if forgiveness requires me to minimize my own hurt? Liam set down his fork and looked at me seriously. Emma, forgiveness doesn't mean amnesia. You can forgive someone and still acknowledge that they caused real damage. The question is whether you want to do the work to rebuild together, not whether you're going to pretend it never happened. That weekend, I did something I hadn't done since the whole mess started. I looked up the Digital Marketing Innovation Summit online. The conference videos were posted on their website, and I spent Saturday afternoon watching session recordings, taking notes like I'd actually been there. One presentation particularly caught my attention: building resilient brands through authentic storytelling. The speaker, a woman named Dr. Sarah Chen, talked about how the most powerful marketing comes from truth, even when that truth is messy or painful. Consumers connect with authenticity, she said, clicking to a slide showing campaign examples. They can sense when a brand is trying to hide its flaws versus when it's owning its imperfections and showing how those experiences shaped something better. I paused the video, her words echoing in my mind. Maybe that's what Ava and I needed to do: own our imperfections and figure out how to shape something better from them. On impulse, I called her. Emma? Her voice was surprised, but hopeful. Hey, are you free?
I want to show you something. An hour later, Ava sat on my couch watching the same presentation I'd just finished. I studied her face as Dr. Chen talked about authentic storytelling, noting how she leaned forward during the parts about turning vulnerability into strength. When it ended, Ava was quiet for a long moment. She's right, isn't she? About authenticity being more powerful than perfection. I think so. And I've been thinking about us, about what we've been doing wrong all these years. What do you mean? I tucked my legs under me, facing her fully. We've been performing for each other instead of being real with each other. I've been the successful cousin who has everything figured out, and you've been the supportive cousin who cheers me on without letting me see your struggles. But that's not authentic, and it's not sustainable. Ava's eyes filled with recognition. I did that, didn't I? I made myself into your cheerleader instead of your equal. And I let you because it was easier than having complicated conversations about jealousy or competition or feeling left behind. I sighed. We created these roles for ourselves and then got trapped in them. So what do we do now? We start over. Not from the beginning, but from the truth. We stop protecting each other from difficult feelings and start trusting each other enough to be messy and human and real. Ava nodded slowly. That sounds terrifying. Good. If it doesn't scare us a little, we're probably not doing it right. She laughed, and for the first time in weeks, it sounded genuine. Okay, truth time. I've been jealous of your success for years, and I convinced myself that jealousy made me a terrible person, so I buried it and overcompensated by being extra supportive. But burying it just made it grow bigger and more toxic. I took a breath. Truth time back. I've sometimes felt guilty about my success because it highlighted your struggles, and instead of talking about it openly, I started downplaying my achievements around you, which probably made you feel like I was patronizing you. Yes, it did. It felt like you thought I was too fragile to handle your good news. And your over-the-top enthusiasm sometimes felt performative, which made me question whether you really cared or if you were just going through the motions. We sat with this honesty for a moment, these admissions that would have felt like attacks a month ago, but now felt like relief. This is weird, Ava said. Which part? Saying these things out loud and not having it destroy us? Actually feeling closer to you because of it? I smiled. Dr. Chen would approve. Authentic storytelling in action. Over the next month, Ava and I began what she called friendship rehab, regular check-ins where we practiced being real with each other instead of perfect. Some conversations were harder than others. I need to tell you something, and I don't want you to try to fix it or make it better, Ava said during one of our Tuesday coffee meetings. I'm seeing a therapist about the harassment situation, and she thinks I might have some trauma responses that I need to work through. Sometimes I feel scared and small and angry all at once, and I need you to know that those feelings might leak into our relationship sometimes.
Okay, I said, fighting every instinct to offer solutions or reassurance. Thank you for telling me. What do you need from me when those feelings come up? Just patience. And maybe don't take it personally if I seem distant or defensive sometimes. It's not about you. I can do that. The following week, it was my turn to be vulnerable. I've been thinking about the promotion and the conference and everything, and I realize I've been using my career success to define my worth as a person. When you took the ticket, it didn't just feel like you were stealing a trip. It felt like you were saying my achievements didn't matter. Ava winced. That wasn't what I was saying at all. I know that now, but I need to work on not tying my self-worth so tightly to my professional accomplishments, because that pressure probably contributed to why I felt like I couldn't share my doubts or struggles with you. These conversations were exhausting in the best possible way. We were learning each other's emotional languages, understanding the insecurities and triggers that had shaped our interactions for years without our conscious awareness. Meanwhile, Ava had started working with a career counselor who specialized in helping harassment survivors rebuild their professional confidence. She'd also connected with a support group for women who'd faced similar situations. Watching her slowly reclaim her sense of professional worth was like watching someone recover from a long illness. Gradual, but transformative. I had an interview today, she told me during one of our calls. Local nonprofit that does advocacy work for workplace equity. It went really well. That's amazing! How do you feel about it? Nervous, but excited. It would be a pay cut from what I was making before, but the work matters to me, and they specifically value people with lived experience of the issues they're fighting. You'd be incredible at that kind of work. Thank you. And Emma, I mean that genuinely, not performatively. I'm learning the difference. I laughed. I'm learning to recognize the difference, too. A week later, she got the job. When she called to tell me, I could hear the joy and relief in her voice. It's not the fancy startup position I thought I wanted, but it feels right. Like I can use what happened to me to help other people. I'm so proud of you. And I meant it completely. There's something else. My first paycheck, I want to use part of it to pay you back for the ticket. I know it won't undo what happened, but I need to make that right. I almost told her not to worry about it, that money wasn't the point, but I caught myself. She needed to make amends in concrete ways, and I needed to let her. Thank you. That means a lot. And Emma, maybe when I've saved up enough, we could plan a trip together. Not to replace your New York conference, but to celebrate this, us figuring out how to be real with each other. The idea sent a warm feeling through my chest. I'd like that. 6 weeks after our first real conversation, Ava and I faced our first major test of our rebuilt relationship. I got offered an opportunity to attend another conference, this time in San Francisco, with my company covering all expenses. My first instinct was to downplay it, to mention it casually so she wouldn't feel bad about her own situation, but I caught myself. We'd promised to be authentic with each other. Ava, I need to tell you about something exciting that happened at work today, and I want to share it with you fully, but I also want to check in about how you're feeling about hearing good news right now. She paused, and I could almost hear her thinking through her response. I appreciate you asking. I'm in a good headspace today, and I want to hear your good news. But if I start feeling triggered or jealous, I'll tell you instead of pretending I'm fine. Deal. I told her about the San Francisco opportunity, about how my boss had specifically chosen me to represent our team, about the presentations I'd get to give, and the networking opportunities. As I spoke, I watched her face carefully, looking for signs of the old performance versus genuine reactions. Emma, that's incredible, she said, and I could see she meant it. You've worked so hard for recognition like this. Tell me about the sessions you're most excited about. We spent an hour talking through the conference agenda, and it felt like the kind of conversation we'd always wanted to have, but never quite managed. Me fully celebrating my achievements, her fully celebrating with me, both of us authentic in our responses. But the real test came 2 days later, when Ava called me in tears. I need to talk to someone, and I don't know if I should bother you with this, she said, her voice shaky. Ava, what's wrong? I found out today that my old boss, the one who harassed me, got promoted. He's now the regional director. And the woman who replaced me in my old position, she quit after 3 weeks, citing a hostile work environment. I felt a surge of rage on her behalf. That's awful. How are you feeling? Angry, sad, vindicated that I wasn't imagining things, but also furious that nothing has changed. And I feel guilty for dumping this on you when you're preparing for your big conference. Stop right there, I said firmly. This is exactly the kind of thing you should be telling me. My good news doesn't cancel out your difficult news. We can hold both things at the same time. Are you sure? Because I know I have a history of bringing you down right when things are going well for you. I recognized this as one of her trauma responses, the fear that her pain was too much, too inconvenient, too burdensome. Ava, listen to me. Your feelings aren't burdensome. Your struggles don't diminish my successes. We're allowed to have different experiences at the same time." She was quiet for a moment. "I'm still learning to believe that." "I know, and I'm still learning to hold space for complicated emotions instead of trying to fix everything immediately. But we're both learning, and that's what matters." We talked for another hour about her anger, her sense of injustice, her worry for the woman who'd taken her old position. I listened without trying to solve anything, and she shared without apologizing for having difficult feelings. When we hung up, I realized something important had shifted. For the first time in our relationship, we'd successfully navigated a situation where my life was going well and hers was challenging, without either of us retreating into our old patterns of performance and protection. The next morning, Ava texted me, "Thank you for last night, for letting me be angry and sad without making it about you, and for sharing your excitement about SF without dimming it because of my stuff. I think we're getting the hang of this." I smiled as I typed back, "We're definitely getting the hang of this." But the real confirmation came that evening when she called again, her voice lighter. "I've been thinking about what you said about holding space for complicated emotions, and I realized something. I can be genuinely excited for your San Francisco opportunity and still feel triggered by my own work situation. Those aren't contradictory feelings, they're just human feelings." Exactly. And I can be fully present for your anger about your old boss and fully excited about my conference. We're not taking anything away from each other by having our own experiences. It's weird how simple that sounds when you say it out loud, but how hard it was for us to actually do it. Maybe that's because we spent so many years thinking love meant protecting each other from difficult truths instead of supporting each other through them. "Yeah," she said softly, "but I like this version better. It feels more real." It feels more real because it is more real. We're not characters in each other's stories anymore. We're actual people with actual lives that sometimes intersect and sometimes don't, and that's okay. As I prepared for my San Francisco trip over the next few weeks, Ava was genuinely helpful and excited for me. She helped me practice my presentation, suggested questions I might ask during networking sessions, and even researched restaurants I should try. But she also told me when she was having hard days about her own career transition, and I listened without guilt or the need to fix everything. The night before I left for the conference, she came over to help me pack.
"I know it doesn't make up for the New York trip," she said quickly, "but I wanted you to have something to remember that even when we mess up badly, even when we hurt each other, we can find our way back to something real." I hugged her tightly, both of us understanding that this wasn't about replacing what was lost, but about acknowledging what we'd found in the wreckage. A stronger, more honest version of love. "Thank you," I whispered, "for this and for doing the hard work with me." "Thank you for not giving up on us," she whispered back. As I boarded my flight to San Francisco the next morning, wearing Ava's bracelet, I realized that while I'd lost my chance at that original New York conference, I'd gained something far more valuable. A relationship built on truth instead of performance, authenticity instead of protection, and the kind of love that can survive even the most devastating betrayals when both people are willing to do the work of rebuilding trust from the ground up. 6 months later, I stood in the departure lounge at O'Hare Airport, checking my boarding pass for the third time. Flight 892 to Barcelona, departing in 45 minutes. This time, though, I wasn't traveling alone. "You're making me nervous with all that ticket checking," Ava said, settling into the seat beside me with 2 overpriced airport coffees. "It's not going anywhere." I laughed, accepting my latte. Old habits. Plus, I think I have mild PTSD from the last time I was supposed to take a big trip. "Fair enough," she said, then paused. "Actually, can we talk about that for a minute? I know we've worked through a lot, but I want to acknowledge that being in an airport with you might bring up some difficult feelings. This was who we were now, people who named the uncomfortable truths instead of dancing around them. It had taken months of practice, but checking in about potential triggers had become as natural as asking if someone wanted cream in their coffee. You know what's weird? I'm watching planes taxi outside the massive windows. I thought it would, but honestly,
I'm just excited. Maybe because this trip is ours, not something that was taken from me. Ours, Ava repeated, her face breaking into a genuine smile. I love the sound of that. Do you remember when we first started planning this trip? I was so nervous about suggesting it because I thought you might see it as me trying to replace what I'd taken from you. And I was nervous about being too enthusiastic because I didn't want you to think I was over what happened. We've really come a long way from walking on eggshells. The early planning had been tentative and careful, with every suggestion followed by qualifiers like, but only if you're comfortable with that. The breakthrough had come when I'd suggested Barcelona and Ava had literally squealed with delight before catching herself and trying to tone down her enthusiasm. Stop doing that, I said, laughing. I want to see you happy about this trip. Your genuine excitement doesn't hurt me. From that point forward, the planning had become pure joy. Hours spent researching museums and restaurants, debating day trips, arguing good-naturedly about scheduling versus spontaneity. We'd planned this Barcelona trip together over the course of 3 months, both of us contributing equally to the expenses and the itinerary. It wasn't the marketing conference I'd originally missed, and it wasn't the job interview Ava desperately needed. It was something entirely new, a celebration of what we'd built from the ashes of our worst moment. Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to begin boarding flight 892 to Barcelona. As we gathered our carry-on bags, I thought about how we'd gotten here. The path from betrayal to this moment hadn't been linear or easy. There had been setbacks, difficult conversations, and moments when I wondered if we were fooling ourselves into thinking we could rebuild something that had been so thoroughly broken. The turning point had come 3 months after San Francisco, when Ava received news that would test everything we'd rebuilt. She'd been offered a promotion to head the nonprofit's new workplace harassment prevention initiative. When she called with the news, I could hear complex emotions in her voice before she started explaining. Emma, something amazing happened today, but there's a part I need to talk through with you. Tell me everything.
They offered me the director position for the new prevention program. More money, more responsibility, the chance to create something meaningful. But Emma, a big part of the job involves traveling to speak at conferences about workplace harassment and recovery. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. Conference speaking, the very opportunity at the heart of our crisis, was now central to Ava's career advancement. How do you feel about that? I'd asked carefully. Excited and terrified. The work feels like my calling, but I'm worried about how you'll feel about me getting conference opportunities. Ava, I said slowly, your professional opportunities have nothing to do with mine. You speaking at conferences about harassment prevention doesn't take anything away from me speaking at marketing conferences. We're in completely different fields. But what if I have to talk about my own experience and how it led to complications with family relationships? Then you tell the truth, I'd said. You tell them that trauma responses aren't always pretty, that desperate people sometimes make choices they regret, and that healing includes rebuilding damaged relationships. That's not shameful. It's what makes you qualified to help others. The crying that followed had been tears of relief and gratitude. Passengers in boarding group A, please approach the gate, the announcement continued. That's us, Ava said, checking her boarding pass. As we walked toward the gate agent, I touched the silver bracelet on my wrist, the one with the airplane charm that Ava had given me before my San Francisco trip. I'd worn it to every important event since then, a reminder that some gifts come from the wreckage of our worst moments. Boarding passes and passports, please, the gate agent said with a professional smile. I handed over my documents, noting how steady my hands were. No anxiety about missing flights or stolen tickets, just the normal pre-travel excitement of someone about to embark on an adventure with someone they loved. As we walked down the jet bridge, Ava turned to me. Can I tell you something? Always. I used to fantasize about us taking a trip together, but I never thought it would actually happen. I was always too broke or too unstable or too ashamed of where I was in life compared to where you were. And now? Now I know that where we are in life doesn't matter as much as whether we're willing to be honest about it. We found our seats, 32A and 32B, windows in middle, and began the familiar ritual of settling in for a long flight. As other passengers filed past us, I thought about how different this felt from that morning months ago when I'd discovered my stolen boarding pass. That day, I'd felt powerless, betrayed, like my dreams were at the mercy of other people's choices. Today, I felt like the author of my own story, traveling with someone who was the author of hers, our narratives intertwining by choice rather than desperation. "You have something for me, too," I said, reaching into my carry-on bag. I pulled out a small wrapped package and handed it to Ava. Inside was a leather journal with Barcelona and Beyond embossed on the cover. I thought we could document this trip together, not just the places we go and things we see, but the conversations we have, the things we learn about each other, the ways we continue to grow, a record of who we're becoming. Ava's eyes filled with tears. "Emma, this is perfect. But why and beyond?" "Because this trip isn't an ending. It's a beginning. We've learned how to be real with each other, how to navigate conflict, how to celebrate each other's successes and support each other through struggles. Now we get to see what kind of adventures we can have with those skills." As the plane pushed back from the gate, I looked out the window at the city below, Chicago, where we'd grown up together, where we'd learned to love each other and hurt each other, and finally how to do both with authenticity and grace. The skyline looked different from this perspective, smaller, more manageable, like a chapter in a book rather than the entire story. "You know what I'm most excited about?" Ava said, settling back in her seat as we taxied toward takeoff. "What?" "Getting to see Barcelona with someone who really knows me. Not the version of me I thought you wanted to see or the version I thought would be easiest for you to love, but the actual me."
Messy and complicated and still figuring things out, but also strong and capable and excited about the future. "Same," I said, feeling the engines power up beneath us, and getting to share it with someone I don't have to perform for anymore. Someone who knows about my anxieties and my ambitions and my tendency to overpack for trips and still chooses to travel with me anyway. She laughed, gesturing to my overstuffed carry-on bag. "Speaking of which, what exactly did you bring in that thing? It looks like you packed for a month-long expedition." "Everything," I admitted without embarrassment. "I brought backup chargers, backup chargers, 3 different guidebooks, a first aid kit, protein bars, translation apps, maps printed from the internet, comfortable walking shoes plus backup comfortable walking shoes, and probably some things I forgot I packed. And this is why we work as travel partners. I brought my passport, my phone, a credit card, 1 change of clothes, and I figured we'd figure out everything else as we went along." Complementary travel styles. Complementary everything, it turns out. You bring the planning and preparation. I bring the spontaneity and willingness to get lost. You bring the practical solutions. I bring the emotional processing. You bring the detailed itineraries. I bring the openness to throwing the itinerary out the window if we discover something more interesting. It's like we're finally using our differences as strengths instead of sources of insecurity, I observed. Exactly. Remember how we used to worry that we were too different? Now our differences are part of what makes our relationship so rich. As the plane lifted off, I felt that familiar moment of weightlessness that comes with leaving the ground. But this time, instead of feeling like escape or departure, it felt like expansion, the physical sensation of possibilities opening up, of horizons literally and figuratively broadening. Looking down at the city growing smaller beneath us, I thought about all the people who had played a role in getting us to this moment. Liam, who had helped me investigate and supported me through anger without rushing me toward forgiveness. Jordan, who had been brave enough to reveal secrets when honesty might be more helpful than loyalty. My mother, who had shared her own story of sisterly conflict and reconciliation. "Can I read you something?" Ava asked, pulling out her phone as we reached cruising altitude. "Of course." "I've been working on a speech for that big conference next month, the one in Denver where I'm giving the keynote on rebuilding after betrayal, and there's a section I want to run past you." "I'd love to hear it." She cleared her throat and began reading. "Sometimes the most important relationships in our lives aren't the ones that never face conflict, but the ones that learn to transform conflict into deeper understanding. When someone we love hurts us, We have a choice. We can let that hurt define the relationship, or we can use it as an opportunity to build something more honest and resilient. The relationships that survive betrayal and emerge stronger aren't the ones where the betrayal didn't matter. They're the ones where both people were willing to do the difficult work of rebuilding trust on a foundation of truth rather than performance. I've felt goosebumps rise on my arms. Ava, that's beautiful and true. It's our story, she said simply. The story of how we learned that love isn't about never hurting each other. It's about what we choose to do after the hurt happens. Are you going to tell our specific story in the speech? Parts of it, with your permission. I want to be honest about the fact that my trauma responses led me to make choices that hurt someone I loved, and that recovery included learning to rebuild that relationship in a healthier way. I think there are people who need to hear that trauma recovery isn't just an individual journey. It often involves repairing relationships that were damaged along the way. You have my permission, I said without hesitation. More than that, I have your encouragement. If our mess can help other people navigate their messes more successfully, then something genuinely good came from all the pain. We spent the next hour working together on her speech, me offering suggestions for clarity and flow while she refined the emotional beats. It felt like the kind of collaboration we'd always been capable of but had never quite achieved. Two minds working together without competition or insecurity, each contributing our strengths to something meaningful. When the flight attendant came by with dinner service, we were deep in conversation about the psychology of forgiveness and the difference between reconciliation and enabling. Other passengers probably thought we were academics or therapists, not two cousins who'd nearly destroyed their relationship over a stolen plane ticket. You know what's funny? I said as we opened our airline meals. I used to think our relationship was perfect because we never fought. Now I know it's strong because we learned how to fight well.
Fighting well, Ava repeated. I like that phrase. It should be a required life skill. Right up there with basic financial literacy and how to change a tire. Speaking of required life skills, she said, taking a bite of her airplane pasta, I've been thinking about what I want to do when we get back from this trip. What do you mean? I mean, I love my job, and I'm good at it. But I've been wondering if there's a way to take what I've learned about rebuilding after betrayal and turn it into something bigger. Maybe writing or coaching or, I don't know, something that helps people navigate the aftermath of broken trust. I set down my fork, struck by the potential of what she was describing. Ava, that's brilliant. There are so many people who could benefit from that kind of guidance. You think so? It wouldn't be stepping on your territory in marketing and communications? I recognized this question for what it was, an old pattern trying to resurface, the fear that our professional paths might somehow compete with each other. Ava, I said gently, my marketing career has nothing to do with your potential career in relationship recovery. We're not in competition. We're not even in the same field. We're just two people who happen to be related, each following our own calling. Right, she said, smiling. I knew that. I just needed to hear it out loud. And you know what? If you do decide to pursue this path, I'd love to help. Not as your cousin who feels obligated to support you, but as someone who believes in the work and thinks you'd be amazing at it. Really? Really. You could help so many people, Ava. And after everything we've been through, you'd be helping them from a place of real experience, not just theory. As the plane flew through the night sky over the Atlantic, we continued planning, not just our Barcelona itinerary, but the lives we wanted to build moving forward. Ava talked about her long-term vision for expanding the nonprofit's reach, possibly writing a book about trauma recovery and relationship repair. I shared my thoughts about transitioning my marketing skills toward working with organizations that aligned more closely with my values. It's funny, I said as we shared a small bag of airplane pretzels, how what felt like the worst thing that ever happened to our relationship turned out to be the catalyst for both of us finding more meaningful work. I've been thinking about that too, Ava replied. Not that I'm glad I betrayed your trust. I'll never be glad about that. But I am grateful for what we learned about ourselves and each other through the process of rebuilding. Like what?
Like how strong we both are. Like how much we really love each other underneath all the performance and protection. Like how capable we are of changing patterns that weren't serving us. I nodded, thinking about how different our conversations had become. Where we used to dance around difficult topics, we now approach challenging subjects with curiosity and care. Where we used to compete subtly for validation, we now celebrated each other's successes with genuine enthusiasm. You know what I learned? I said. I learned that I was so afraid of being selfish that I sometimes withheld honest feedback when you needed it. And I learned that I was using my career success to define my worth, which put pressure on our relationship. And I learned that I was so afraid of being a burden that I hid struggles you could have helped me with. And I learned that my envy of your success was really about my own insecurities. We were both trying so hard to be perfect for each other that we forgot to be real with each other. And perfect is exhausting. Real is sustainable. We were quiet for a while as the plane carried us across time zones toward morning. I felt a wave of gratitude for this woman who had been willing to do the hard work of rebuilding our relationship from the ground up. It would have been easier to write off what happened as unforgivable and move on separately. But we had chosen the more difficult path of facing our failures honestly and committing to building something stronger together. Look, Ava said, pointing out the window. I leaned over to see the first hints of sunrise beginning to paint the sky in soft pinks and golds. We were somewhere over the ocean, suspended between continents and time zones, flying toward a city neither of us had ever seen. It's beautiful, I whispered. Yeah, she said. It is. As I watched the sunrise, I thought about the moment 6 months ago when I'd discovered my stolen boarding pass, when I'd felt like my world was ending. If someone had told me then that the betrayal would ultimately lead to the strongest, most authentic relationship of my life, I wouldn't have believed them. But here we were, 35,000 feet above the Atlantic, traveling toward adventures we'd planned together, carrying journal pages we'd fill together, supporting dreams we'd build together. The plane began its descent into Barcelona as the city awakened below us. I touched Ava's hand and she turned to me, her face bright with excitement and possibility. "Ready for an adventure?" she asked. "With you, I'm ready for anything." As we prepared to land in a new country in a new chapter of our relationship, I realized that some journeys begin with stolen tickets and betrayed trust, but the best ones, the ones that really matter, begin with the choice to rebuild something better from the wreckage. Barcelona was waiting for us, and so was the rest of our lives. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.